Welcome to another episode of the Nutrition Hero Podcast. I'm Dr. Brad Watts, your host. A new year, a new intro. It's going to go pretty well. I can feel it already. Anyhow, today's guest is a gentleman that I consider to be one of the kings in functional medicine, and I was very delighted to be able to sit down before the holiday season here with Dr. Tom O'Brien. Dr. O'Brien has extensive work not only as a practitioner, a doctor, but also in the research and basically going through the research with a fine-tooth comb and preparing information that is actionable for you in your clinic, and it's digestible. It's information that you can use on day one. I'm so excited to be able to bring this podcast episode to you. Dr. O'Brien is a busy guy, and he was kind enough to take the opportunity to spend some of his attention with us. You'll note that in the podcast notes below, there is a link to the Docuseries. Dr. O'Brien provided this for free for you here on Nutrition Hero Podcast. The Docuseries is called Betrayal. We do get to talk about that a little bit during the podcast here, but I would suggest take a look. You will never be the same after watching this. Secondly, Dr. O'Brien's book called The Autoimmune Fix is currently out. You can find it on Amazon, or you can find it on barnesandnoble.com, and should be able to find that through this link here as well. So go ahead and do that. Without any further ado, here is Dr. Tom O'Brien. Dr. O'Brien, welcome to the Nutrition Hero Podcast. I have to tell you, I'm honored that you are participating with us today, so thank you.
Thank you so much. It's really a pleasure to be with you.
Thank you very much. I do have to say that I've been reading your book. Phenomenal. It's just absolutely phenomenal. It has been an experience, I'll just say that. But one of the things that I appreciate is the passion with which you write, and I have heard you lecture in the past as well. Same deal with that, the passion with which you speak. So I just want to say thank you for producing that first of all.
Oh, you're very kind, man. Thanks so much. And I guess my response would be pay it forward. Carry the message forward in the world. You know, that's what this is all about. And it's not about my book. It's about the information that's in there that's so critical for people to know.
Absolutely. So what we're doing right now is we're actually talking about Dr. O'Brien's book, and it's going to segue here, Doctor, into your docuseries here in a second, which is phenomenal. But the Autoimmune Fix, for all of you listening here, the Autoimmune Fix by Dr. Tom O'Brien. Check it out. It's available online. I tracked it down at Barnes & Noble, Amazon, all over the place. So how long did it take you to write this book, Doctor?
33 years.
30, very good. 33 years. So it felt like it when I was reading it.
I thought about it for a long time. I really did. And I said, I've got to write a book. I've got to get this information out there. But I'm too much of a geek, and I'm too much. And it would take me a few weeks to write one page. And life is busy, and I just couldn't get around to it. So I hired a consultant to make my work more efficient. And one of the things he did was he showed me how to use a team to write the book. So, I interviewed a number of ghost writers, and then the person who really got me and got the message, that's the person that I had watched 12 hours of videos of me, and then I gave her a test to see if she passed the test, and she did. And so it's my voice through her pen.
That is phenomenal. So,
yeah.
And I do have to say it worked out pretty well, just so you know.
Yeah, thanks, man. Thanks so much.
One of the things that I appreciate about your book is the heart with which you're approaching the subject matter. You had mentioned $100 billion in revenue every year around autoimmune diseases, and you called it an industry. I want to talk about that a little bit. The autoimmune industry, how do you define that?
We've known for a long, long time that there are certain aspects of lifestyle that make one vulnerable to disease, and the suppression of that information by the industry, so that you don't know that all of the tuna has mercury in it now. All of it does. Now you can get really low mercury tuna. That's certainly possible, but with an understanding, or salmon.
Mm-hmm.
It's not rocket science to know that farm-raised salmon is full of crap.
Right.
It's, but salmon is healthy for you. Well, no, salmon is healthy for you. Farm-raised salmon is not healthy for you.
Right.
Farm-raised salmon is not salmon. They've got to inject that fish with dye to make it look like salmon. And we've heard something about that, but so the suppression of information. I mean, I've got two photos that I just love, and it really set the stage for me. One of them was from the mid '90s. It was on the front page of the New York Times. It's called the Seven Dwarfs, and it's the heads of the 7 largest tobacco companies in the world testifying before Congress, and they're all like this. That's the photo. So the photographer was in front of them, in between them and the committee that they were testifying in front of, and he took the photo. They all had their hands in the air, hands over their heart. I'm going to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. Exactly. And then they lied through their teeth. They lied through their teeth. And the second photo is called the 4 Horsemen. Same thing, front page in the New York Times. It's the heads of the 4 largest HMOs in the country testifying before Congress about some aspect of healthcare. And they lied through their teeth. But one of them said really clearly, and it was really a valid point. He said, look, we're a business and we have to answer to our stockholders, so we have to show a profit. And it's not profitable for us to pay for preventive health care because average subscriber to our health care plans, the average lifespan of that person is 2.2 years with our company. Then they find a cheaper plan somewhere. They find cheaper insurance. So why should we pay for a test that will give value, absolute value, down the road 10 years from now when they're not going to be our client anymore?
Exactly. Wow.
And that was really powerful.
Wow.
And it just went past everybody.
Wow.
But that guy spoke the truth. We're in it for the profit. We want to do a good job, but we're in it for the profit. It's not profitable to help people be healthy.
Yeah, at least he laid it out there, right? At least he was willing to say that. So,
exactly.
Wow.
So the docuseries that you're referring to, the title is Betrayal, the autoimmune disease secret they're not telling you. This is the secret, is that it's not rocket science to arrest autoimmune disease. It's not rocket science. Lupus, rheumatoid, MS, there are so many studies of the triggers that set this stuff off and that keep propagating it. Every disease, as far as I know, every degenerative disease is a disease of inflammation. At the cellular level, it's always inflamed. It's just a question, is it a brain cell or a kidney cell? Is it gasoline or kerosene?
Right.
But it's always inflammation.
Right.
So the first rule of thumb is stop throwing gasoline on the fire.
That's exactly right.
And I guess I'd say, you think?
Right. But that to me sounds like rocket science for a lot of people in the United States.
Well, this is why. Why. When you go see a doctor and you've got the symptoms of maybe you're diabetic, maybe not, we have to see, or maybe you've got hypothyroidism or Hashimoto's thyroid disease, but you present with these symptoms.
Right.
It's like you've fallen over a waterfall and crashed into the pond below. You swim up to the surface and spit out the water, and you're trying to stay afloat in this pond of symptoms of diabetes, or this pond of hypothyroid, or this pond of brain dysfunction, brain fog. I'm not remembering the way I used to. My brain's not working right. Whatever the pond is, you're trying to stay afloat, but the water is really turbulent because the waterfall is still falling down into the waterfall. You're still exposed to the environmental toxins.
Right.
So everybody is looking for the life jacket to stay afloat in the pond of diabetes, or in the pond of migraines, or in the pond of recurrent miscarriages. It doesn't matter what the symptoms are. We've all been trained to look for the life jacket with the least side effects. Hopefully with the least side effects, right?
That is an awesome word picture right there. Just go
Yeah.
ahead. That's
Yeah.
awesome.
So what you have to do, get a good life jacket with minimal side effects, as little as possible. Then, and you don't stay afloat in there, still eating your ding-dongs and ho-hos and smoking cigarettes and doing whatever it is that you do in the pond of that field of disease. You have to put the life jacket on, swim over to the side, get out of the water, walk up the hill, go back upstream, go back upriver, and figure what the heck fell in the river.
Right.
They eventually went downstream and over the waterfall. That's how you arrest autoimmune diseases. That's functional medicine.
100%. 100%. And so the listeners of the podcast here, the Nutrition Hero podcast, one of the things they've heard me say time and time again is that there is a lifestyle. There is a lifestyle that is compatible with everybody's genetics, and that has to be basically customized to the individual. But there is a lifestyle that you can live that can unlock the potential in your genetics instead of just bashing you over and over with the waterfall. That is phenomenal. So good job.
That is exactly right. And you do not have to live on brown rice and sprouts.
Right. But if you wanted to, I mean, there you go.
If you wanted to, you could. Right. If you wanted to, you could. As long as you're not sensitive to rice, but or the arsenic that's in most rice. But
exactly.
You can live a rational, vibrant, non-deprived lifestyle. You can live a lush, lavish lifestyle. You just don't keep throwing gasoline on the fire.
So your passion and I hope all of the listeners out there right now are feeling this, the passion that you have, I don't think I've ever felt that any more than when you told the story about your patient Ray. And you told a story about Ray, and I'm not kidding. It was in the first 5 minutes of watching that video, and I was like, "Oh, we gotta pause this." And I wanna bring that up if that's okay. Your passion for searching out autoimmune disease, not just that, but the solution for people, seeing the fix, seeing the solution. Where does that come from? Is that deep down inside? Is it a personal experience? Where is that coming from?
It's truth. It's just truth. Anything less than living your truth is a lie, right? And you want to be authentic with what's true for you. Whatever that means, whatever it means. And as long as you don't hurt other people. And where does the passion come from? Well, I don't know. I don't know how to say that. I've had a number of people sick around me in my life and in my family and all that. When my dad died, as an example, this was back in 1990. He had a massive coronary, and the chief pathologist who did the autopsy, city of Detroit, the chief pathologist, friend of the family, he called me and said, "Dr. Brian, I don't know why your dad died." I said, "What do you mean?" And he said that he had a heart attack, but there was no evidence of a clot. And he only had 30% blockage in his left descending coronary. Now, that's the widowmaker, but that's not enough. 30% blockage is not enough. I don't know why your dad died. We suspected foul play. I'm sorry, that's the law. So we did toxicology screens. There was nothing. I looked for needle marks. There was nothing. I did lung biopsy to see if he had breathed something. There was nothing. Second time in my career, chief pathologist, city of Detroit. Second time in my career, I don't know why your dad died. That sent me on a hunt. This is 1990. Because his brother, my uncle, had died at 44 at the kitchen table. Boom. And in his will, he had provision, no autopsy. Jerk. So nobody knew why he died. Right? He just died. So this told me there might be something in the family. I need to pursue this. And so my search led me to Dr. Kilmer McCulley. Dr. McCulley, who was at Harvard in the late 60s, early 70s, writing papers, first-tier papers. That means published in the Journal the American Medical Association, the New England Journal of Medicine, Lancet, the British Medical Journal. Really tough papers to get your work published in. First tier papers. He was publishing that we have to put B vitamins in the cereal because hundreds of thousands of people are dying unnecessarily from a lack of B vitamins. Now that doesn't sound like rocket science to us today, but in the late 60s, early 70s, no one was writing about anything like that. And they thought he was a nutcase. And there was a lobbying effort to get him fired. Kilmer McCulley was fired from Harvard and blacklisted. The only place he could get a job was a basement laboratory in a VA hospital in Maryland. So he couldn't get a job anywhere, so he moved to Maryland. And he kept doing his work. His papers were so good, they got published in the premier journals. And now he's considered the godfather of homocysteine research. Because homocysteine is a metabolite that is, if you have high homocysteine, it's called the silent killer. And all you have to do is take B6, B12, folic acid, and trimethylglycine, and your homocysteine comes down to normal in 95% of the people.
Right.
As long as you take the B vitamins. And we all know that today in your education, you got that as a basic 101 concept. But back in the 70s, the guy lost his job and he lost all of his prestige. So David Jones is the president emeritus of the Institute for Functional Medicine, and he had dinner with Dr. McCulley. Gosh, this is about 8 years ago now, I guess, 8 or 9 years ago. And he said, Kilmer, do you have any regrets for how medicine treated you? And he said, no. My wife and I are very happy. You know, our grandchildren are healthy and happy. The guy's like Chris Kringle, just a happy, kind man. And David Jones said, don't you have any regrets? And David tells the story that Kilmer McCulley got a tear in his eye. And he said, we estimate that over 250,000 people died over 5 years before any of this work started getting any mileage. My dad was one of those guys. Because after I talked to Dr. McCulley, so I called Dr. McCulley. I said, hi, Dr. McCulley, it's Tom O'Brien. Well, hello, Tom. How are you? And we had met. And I said, Dr. McCulley, I know that if you have an elevated homocysteine, it can cause a vasospasm. Your blood vessels just spasm, or your muscles spasm. He said, yes. I said, can it cause a vasospasm at the site of a 30% blockage in the left descending coronary, effectively making it 100% blockage? And he said, Tom, we've reproduced that in the laboratory. That's how my dad died. So he had this spasm of the blood vessel at the weakest spot, stopped all the blood going to the heart, left descending coronary, massive heart attack, then the blood vessel relaxes. There's no evidence of what happened or why it happened. So I checked. I've got elevated homocysteine. My brother, my sister, 19 of my 21 first cousins do. I wrote the letter to all of them and said, do this test now. And I'm the oldest cousin, right? So I could boss them around.
Right. Yes, sir. So, right.
19 of 21 first cousins all have it. And all you have to do is take B vitamins and you're fine.
Right.
It causes miscarriages. It causes strokes. It causes heart attacks. It's a silent killer. So, you know, the pioneers, the ones who carry the message out, are usually the ones that are blacklisted because they're going against the grain.
That's right.
So, I guess I'm in it because I can't do anything else. This is just what comes up to do.
Well, you bring up that word pioneer, and for your age demographic, I'm sure you can come up with 10 guys, 20 guys, ladies, whatever, that are pioneers. But I just want to let you know that to my age demographic, you're a pioneer. You got to know that. I've referred to you, by the way, as a king in functional medicine, and I don't take that lightly. I don't give that out very often, so just so you know.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
One of the things that I appreciate about your book is the communication with people from tons of different areas in medicine and science. And what is it fun for you to do the research? Or are you more interested in the dissemination of the information afterwards? What part of it do you like the most?
Oh, I love just reading the studies. Any of the bathrooms in my house, you'll see things, you'll see papers everywhere with highlights.
Just
This
check
is
it.
the Association of Gestational Weight Gain and Maternal Body Mass Index in Early Pregnancy with Risk for Non-Effective Psychosis in Offspring. So these are the offspring, the children that develop schizophrenia 30 years later because of mom's weight gain or lack of weight gain in pregnancy.
Wow.
And they developed schizophrenia 30 years later. And
Wow.
the paper that got me to look for that was that pregnant women, this is like an OMG, pregnant women, if they're in the top 10% of antibodies to wheat of the group that's studied, in the top 10%, they have an 80% increased risk. Their children have an 80% increased risk of developing schizophrenia 30 years later. If they're in the top 5% of antibodies to wheat, it's 250% more likely to develop schizophrenia 30, 40 years later. They checked dairy. There was no association. Those women that had elevated antibodies to dairy, no increased risk for brain dysfunction of any type. Wheat, it was wheat. And I said, whoa! And so from there, I'm doing a little project right now. I'm going to write a paper on it. So I pulled up a few more studies. This one just came out earlier this year. And, it just validates it once again.
Wow.
So, yeah, there's papers everywhere. And I take the papers, if they capture me, if it's an OMG paper, I tape it on the ceiling in my bedroom. And when I go to bed at night, I just kind of, wow, oh, yeah. And I've got a little notepad next to my bed, and you pull the pen out, and the tiny little light comes out. So in the middle of the night, you're not blinded by light. Just a tiny little light, and I just write down what I'm thinking, because I used to think, oh, I'll remember that in the morning. I never do.
Right.
I write it down, right? I write it down.
So the when you're looking at specifically gluten, because you brought it up, I know that you are the founder of the Gluten Summit, which I have found a lot of value in, by the way.
Thank you.
And
that's not only to be relaunched, by the way.
Okay, cool.
It's been improved, or I've added a lot more information, and we now are about to relaunch it.
I've even sent patients that way just to to get the information straight from the horse's mouth. And what's awesome is that it's digestible, pardon the pun, but digestible to patients, not just providers. So if anybody's out there listening to this right now, wondering what is the Gluten Summit, look it up. Look it up. So, doctor, with gluten specifically, one of the things that is out there, I think, is a misnomer around gluten is that we can scientifically essentially remove it from the food supply once again. And the way that it was genetically modified into a problem, and now can we genetically modify it out of that problem state? What's your opinion on that?
Well, the first thing is, and this will blow people away who have been studying or trying to be gluten-free. The products that are labeled gluten-free, the FDA did a study, 286 products labeled gluten-free. 97.7% of them were gluten-free, which is great. But that's 2% are not. So if you're a celiac and you get one of those 2%, you're toast.
Right.
You're done. And then they looked at 180 products that were naturally gluten-free, such as rice cakes, rice, salt, water.
Sure.
And they found that 24.7% of the naturally gluten-free products had toxic levels of gluten. So that's the first concept, is that it's almost impossible to avoid exposure.
Wow.
Almost impossible. The second concept is this whole frame of gluten. Gluten's not bad for you. Bad gluten is bad for you. That's the first thing. And the second concept here, Mrs. Patient, think of proteins like a pearl necklace. Hydrochloric acid undoes the clasp of the pearl necklace. Now you have a string of pearls. Now it's your enzymes produced both in the stomach and the pancreas and the liver and the gallbladder, your microbiota. All of these enzymes act as scissors to cut the pearl necklace into smaller clumps of pearls. 33 pearl clump, 17 pearl clump, and then smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller until they're snipped down into each little pearl of the pearl necklace. That's called an amino acid. then the amino acids go right through the walls of the intestines, because your intestines are lined with a cheesecloth. So only really small molecules can get through into the bloodstream, and then your body uses those amino acids to make new bone cells and brain cells and all of that. The problem with wheat is that no human has the scissors to break down wheat into each amino acid, each pearl of the pearl necklace. No human. The best we can do is 33 pearl clump, 17 pearl clump, 11 pearl clump. These are called peptides, and they're gasoline on the fire. They cause inflammation. Harvard published a study a couple of years ago, and this is the 5th one I've got in my bank of studies. They looked at celiacs, recently diagnosed, so their intestines are a mess. They looked at celiacs who had been on a wheat-free diet for a couple of years, so they're better, their intestines are better, healed. They looked at people with non-celiac gluten sensitivity. They have problems with wheat, but they don't have celiac disease. And they looked at people that had no problems with wheat at all. Everyone gets intestinal permeability when they're exposed to wheat. Intestinal permeability is the leaky gut.
Wow.
Everyone.
Wow.
They said every human. So for anyone that's listening to this podcast, if you are human, you do not have the scissors to break down the pearl necklace into amino acids. You are going to create inflammation every time you eat wheat, whether you get sick or not, whether you feel it or not. Now, Mrs. Patient, the fastest growing cells in the body are the inside lining of the intestines. Every 3 to 5 days, you have a whole new lining to your intestines, and you have a whole new body every 7 years. Some cells are really slow, like bone cells, to regenerate. Some cells are much quicker, like the lining of your intestines. We have a whole new body. So if you haven't crossed the line yet, when you eat wheat, you tear the intestines from the inflammation, but it heals. You have a sandwich for breakfast, you tear the intestines, but they heal. Toast for breakfast, tear the intestines, it heals. Sandwich for lunch, tear the intestines, it heals. Pasta for dinner, tear the intestines, and it heals. A cookie, tear the intestines, and it heals. A bagel the next day, tear the intestines, and it heals. A blueberry muffin, tear the intestines, and it heals. Day after day after day after day, until one day you cross that line and you don't heal anymore. That's called loss of oral tolerance. When you lose oral tolerance, now you've got tears in the intestines, they don't heal. Now these larger molecules, these bigger molecules, these macromolecules that haven't had enough time yet to be broken down. You know, that's why your intestines are 25 feet long, is because it takes longer to break down prime rib than it does a banana.
Right.
Right? So sometimes you need to snip, 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 snip in the intestines for feet to break it down into the individual amino acids.
That's right.
Right?
That's right.
So, but when you've got these tears in the cheesecloth and you don't heal anymore, you have intestinal permeability, these macromolecules get into the bloodstream, and your immune system says, whoa, what's that? That's not something I can use to make new bone cells. I better fight that. Now you make antibodies to bananas, or to prime rib, or to basil, or to cinnamon, or to carrots. Oh my God, that's everything I eat. So you do a blood test looking at 90 foods for sensitivities. It comes back 25 foods you're sensitive to.
Right.
Oh my God, that's everything I eat. Well, of course it is.
Exactly.
Your immune system's trying to protect you. Right? When you heal the gut and stop throwing gasoline on the fire, wait 6 months and recheck, now you're sensitive to 2 foods, maybe 3. And those are the ones you just keep them out of there.
Right. So that is phenomenal. With from a patient perspective or a patient approach, how much testing do you do on the front end of taking on a patient for a treatment plan, that type of stuff?
Yeah, there's 3 things we check for on every patient. Well, actually, there's 4. The first one is total immunoglobulins. So is your immune system capable of protecting you? Many people have depleted immune function. Many. So if you're going to do immune tests on people, and if their immune system is depleted, it's a waste of money.
It's not going to show up with anything.
It won't show up.
Yeah.
So those people that have had history of immune diseases, you've had a cancer, you're better now, or you've had recurrent colds. Doc, I get the flu every year. I'm down for a week. That's not bad. That's normal. No, it's not normal.
No, it's
not.
No.
Or recurrent ear infections or recurrent bladder infections or signs and evidence of a compromised immune system. Those people absolutely need to do total immunoglobulin tests first. See, anything we check for, Mrs. Patient, we need to know that if there's enough of the armed forces there, because your immune system's the armed forces in your body. There's an Army, an Air Force, a Marines, a Coast Guard, a Navy. Do you have enough Army soldiers to see, has the Army been called out? Right? So if I'm going to do an IgG test on you, that's the Army, well, do you have enough soldiers to respond if there's a problem?
Right.
That's the first test. After that, the wheat zoomer, which looks at 26 different peptides of poorly digested wheat. See, the problem is every lab in the world looks at one peptide of wheat. They call it gluten. It's alpha-gliadin.
Right.
That's the technical name. It's 33 pearls long, 33 amino acids. It's an important one to check for, but it's only one.
Right.
The studies show there's 62, at least 62, different peptides of poorly digested wheat that can trigger an immune response. So if you're only checking alpha-gliadin, and it comes back negative, and your doctor says, gee, it's negative, it's okay to eat wheat. Nonsense.
Right.
You don't know. All you know is it's okay to eat alpha-gliadin.
Right.
So you don't know about the others, the other 61. So wheat zoomer currently looks at 26 different peptides of poorly digested wheat. It's a great test.
Wow.
And it also looks at intestinal permeability in the same test. So do you have the leaky gut? So that's test number 2. Test number 3 is to see if you have an autoimmune mechanism going on. So you look at, in one blood draw, you can look at 24 different tissues to see, do I have antibodies to my brain? Do I have antibodies to my heart? Do I have antibodies to my lungs or my liver or my muscles or my bones? Is there an autoimmune mechanism going on?
Exactly.
And and test number 4 was permeability that's now been merged into the wheat zoomer. So it's 3 tests. That's the basics for everyone. You don't want to do those tests? You're not my patient.
Good call. So when you...
By the way, for the doctors that are listening to this and the clinicians, anytime you recommend a test to a patient and you really believe that it needs to be done, if the patient says, no, I don't want to do it, say, okay, that's fine. And you write in the file, patient refuses to do this test. And then hand it to the patient and have them sign it. You've got to sign. If you're going to take ownership of your own health, say, no, I'm not going to do that test. Okay, sign this. Well, why would I sign it? Because I'm not responsible. You die. Your family's not coming after me next year because I didn't identify something going on if you refuse to do what I would suggest you do.
Right.
Just sign it, and then I'm happy to treat you. No, I'm not going to sign it. Then you're out of here.
Right.
Here's a list of 3 docs.
Right.
That's right.
Go see my brother-in-law, right? So,
that's right.
So when you
there's a great YouTube video. I don't know why I'm doing this, but it's fun. There's a great YouTube video that this African American woman who was diagnosed with bronchitis, and she said, "Bronchitis! They told me I got bronchitis. Ain't nobody got time for this." It's a really funny video that they took that phrase and they made a song out of it. Ain't nobody got time for this. So if you go to YouTube and watch that, you just laugh your head off.
Oh, goodness.
It's really quite funny.
So are you, like right now, are you still treating patients actively with all of the other stuff you got going on?
Oh, thank you for asking. I see a patient about once every 2 months.
Okay. So
they've got to be a really difficult case to get past my staff.
Gotcha.
But we've got a whole system set up. I have a clinical services department, and we do consultations for people. And my team has direct access to me if any problems come up. But we've set up this whole mechanism to get the history, get all the test results, evaluate everything before you ever make a recommendation.
Yeah.
So that they're thinking the way that I think.
That's phenomenal. So that's really great. When did you go whole hog into the research and writing and teaching? When did you make that transition?
Well, I had a busy practice in Chicago for 20 years, and I used to teach about this. I just wrote a paper recently about it. And, um, but in 1980, when I came out in practice, I was teaching about the work of Hans Selye. Dr. Selye is the guy that coined the word stress and associated it with health, and that the different types of stress that we can have and how it wears down our bodies and how you have to rebuild your body. And I used to talk about that in great detail. And I realized one day I wasn't walking my talk. I was highly stressed. I was in sympathetic depletion. I was in my late 40s. My hair was already white. Or it was salt and pepper then. I've lost the pepper now. But but I really wasn't walking my talk. And so I said, you know what? I'm going to sell this practice. I'm going to change my life. I don't know how, but I'm going to change my life. So I did a 3-year plan and brought in an associate. Well, I had 3 associates, but one of them was specifically because I thought he would be a good candidate to take over, and he was. And I went to the local bank, and I said, this associate's coming on board. I want you to take him to the president of the bank. And I said, I want you to take him to golfing, consolidate all of his loans because he was just out of school, so tie him up and give him great service because you're going to finance him buying my practice. The guy looked at me. What? He said, well, you know my numbers and you know that we're growing every year and it's a good healthy practice. So in 3 years or so you're going to finance it. So every year he'd take them on a golfing outing and stuff, do lunch every once in a while. So they got to know each other. And so he felt really good about this associate. He was a good man, a smart guy and good integrity and a family man. And 3 years later, I sold my practice. And that was in 2000.
Wow.
And I said to the associate, I said, just give me your contract that I gave you. He said, really? I said, yeah. If it's good enough for you, it better be good enough for me, right? So I was going to work for him for a year, but not have all the stress of running the practice. That was in September of 2000, and in March of 2001, I had a career-ending injury, a skiing injury, and I didn't tear, I severed all of the ligaments that hold the arm into the shoulder. Completely tore them off. It's bad when you're in the ER and you're sitting there and the orthopedic surgeon walks in and goes, oh, get the resident. I haven't seen one of these in a while. Right? He can tell right away, but my shoulder was up, down, and way forward. And he said, there's nothing to do for this. This is what's happened. And here's a sling and here's some pain medication. Go home. This was in Steamboat. So go back to Chicago and they'll do surgery. And I said, tell me about the surgery. He said, well, it's an okay surgery. I said, tell me about the surgery. He said, well, it has a 50% failure rate. And if it fails, you're going to have a rough time. So I opted not to do the surgery. But because I was involved in holistic healthcare,
right?
My friend, Dr. Wally Schmidt, this was a Ski with Wally weekend, and Wally is a brilliant practitioner. He spent 2.5 hours working on my injury, my shoulder, took all the memory out of there of the trauma, so then it just had to heal as best as it could. Now I have full range of motion, and I just can't bench press, any weights, but aside from that, I'm fine. And this is now 20 years later.
Well, the real question is did you get back on the skis later?
1 year later, to the day.
Okay.
To the day, same slope. But I tell you that story because that was now 2001, and now I can't do any musculoskeletal care. My training was as a chiropractor, and so I started looking into, what, I've got an important message here to carry out. So I started doing talks, and it was in health food stores. And there'd be 10 people in a health food store. I remember those days. That was, oh man, and now, I was in Brazil last week and we had a couple hundred medical doctors for 10 hours. They had 10 hours of me. And,
that is wonderful.
Yeah. So I tell you that story so that everyone knows that you just put one foot in front of each other, in front of the other, with your passion. Just do your best at the level that you can do your best, and you're going to help humanity, right? And you'll grow, and you'll learn more, and you'll be more impactful. You'll have a larger impact in the world as you continue to grow and expand your message.
That is phenomenal, Doctor. So I think on that, I'm going to wrap up here with you. I so much appreciate your time today and your passion. Not only that, but how you spend your attention. What you're doing right now is you are fueling practices all over the country with information that is actionable, and I don't want you to take it lightly, because the guy on the other side of the computer screen usually takes it very lightly because it's just another random Thursday to him, or a random Wednesday. Okay?
Thank you so much for that. And I guess I'll end with this one for you. Well, there's two things I want to say. First, shameless plug for the book, The Autoimmune Fix. Shameless plug, shameless plug. Everyone needs to read it. Second, if you go, please watch Betrayal. And you asked me why I'm so fired up. And I didn't know if I was going to tell you this or not, but I'm going to end with this one. This is my creed in life. And I used to have this on every treatment room in my office. There are 6 rooms. Every room would have this printed out on the wall, framed on the wall. This is the true joy in life. The being used for a purpose, recognized by yourself as a mighty one. The being a force of nature, instead of a feverish, cloddish little group of ailments and grievances complaining the world will not devote itself to making you happy. I am of the opinion that my life belongs to the whole, and it is my privilege to do for it whatever I can. Life is no brief candle to me. It is a sort of splendid torch I have a hold of for the moment and want to make burn as brightly as possible before passing it on to future generations.
Doctor.
That's what we're all about. That's what we're all about.